Did you know a single Depression-era recipe became so treasured that families passed it down in their wills alongside heirlooms and land? When a dozen eggs cost half a day's wages, American kitchens didn't just adapt, they transformed the way we cook forever. With grocery prices now soaring 12% higher than ever, these long-forgotten recipes are making an unexpected comeback. Families using these time-tested techniques report saving $4,800 a year, more than the cost of their monthly mortgage. Over the next 20 minutes, you'll uncover 25 cheap and popular dinner recipes that shaped American history. From a cake made without eggs or butter now trending on TikTok to a soup so nourishing, it helped families through medical shortages. These aren't just meals, they're money-saving strategies that could cut your grocery bill in half. So let's step into the past, savor the memories, and rediscover the magic of Depression-era cooking. Stone soup. Stone soup is more than just a recipe. It's a tale of ingenuity during America's toughest times. This dish transformed from a folktale into a real survival strategy during the Great Depression. When families watched their savings vanish overnight, they learned that a simple pot of water could be turned into a feast. It wasn't about the stone itself, but about the creativity of turning seemingly worthless scraps into something extraordinary. Starting with just water and vegetable scraps, Depression-era cooks would slowly simmer onions, carrots, and potato peels until each ingredient released its secret flavor. A few onion peels for depth, some potato skins for heartiness, and perhaps a stray meat bone if luck was on their side. All were welcome to create a broth that fed entire neighborhoods. Today, when the average family wastes around $1,500 on discarded food each year, stone soup teaches us the value of patience and resourcefulness. A modern pot of soup may cost around $3.50 to prepare and can feed 8 people, making it less than 50 cents per serving. Back then, just 15 cents could feed a family for a day. Modern home cooks using this method have reported saving up to $125 a month by reusing kitchen scraps, proving that every little bit can become liquid gold. In every bubble of simmering broth, there's a story, a reminder that in the darkest times, a simple idea can spark hope and unity around a shared meal. The legend of stone soup lives on as a testament to human resilience, where every stone has a purpose and every scrap tells a story. Hoover stew. Hoover stew, named after the president whose policies were blamed for economic hardships, became an emblem of Depression-era survival. This hearty stew was made from a medley of inexpensive ingredients, often including beans, vegetables, and any leftover cuts of meat. The stew simmered slowly over low heat, its flavors melding together in a way that made every spoonful a tribute to the resilience of families struggling through hard times. The creation of Hoover stew was both a science and an art. Cooks would gather whatever scraps they could find, toss them into a large pot with water or broth, and let the stew cook until every ingredient had given up its flavor. The result was a dish that was rich in texture and history, a mix of flavors that represented not just nourishment but also the determination to make something satisfying out of very little. Despite its name, Hoover stew was more than a political statement. It was a survival meal, a way to find hope amid the daily struggles of a nation. Today, the legacy of Hoover stew lives on in modern, slow-cooked recipes that embrace the idea of waste not, want not. It stands as a reminder that in every difficult period, there is the possibility of creating a meal that unites and comforts. A dish that, despite its humble ingredients, carries the enduring spirit of a generation that never gave up. Egg drop soup. Egg drop soup became a favorite among Depression-era families for its simplicity and nourishment. This recipe, originally seen as a luxury, was adapted into a frugal yet comforting meal. In a time when eggs were scarce and every bit of protein was treasured, cooks learned to stretch their supplies by whisking eggs into a simmering broth, creating silky ribbons that resembled strands of hope. The process was almost meditative. A pot of broth heated slowly on the stove, with the cook patiently stirring while watching the delicate egg streams swirl and set into a velvety texture. The result was a soup that combined the richness of eggs with the light, refreshing taste of homemade broth. Often, a handful of chopped green onions or a dash of pepper would be added to enhance the flavor. This simple dish not only nourished the body but also lifted spirits, as every spoonful was a testament to the ingenuity of making much from little. Modern interpretations of egg drop soup often use refined techniques, yet the basic principle remains unchanged. Today, families can create this dish with fresh, affordable ingredients, keeping alive the legacy of Depression-era resourcefulness. In a world of expensive restaurant meals and fancy ingredients, egg drop soup stands as a reminder that sometimes the simplest recipes are the most fulfilling, weaving stories of survival into every delicate swirl. Slumgullion. Slumgullion might sound like a dish born from desperation, but its name masks a story of survival and creativity. This hearty stew was a melting pot of whatever ingredients were available: scraps of meat, bits of vegetables, and even wild greens gathered from the neighborhood. It was a dish that was as unpredictable as it was nourishing, a true testament to the improvisational skills of Depression-era cooks. The secret to Slumgullion was its flexibility. In a single, battered pot, families would combine an assortment of leftovers and simmer them slowly over a modest heat. The ingredients merged into a thick, robust stew that not only provided sustenance but also comforted the soul with its rich, layered flavors. Each batch of Slumgullion was unique, reflecting the creativity and resilience of its maker. It was a meal that relied on the notion that even the most unlikely combinations could create something deeply satisfying. Today, the spirit of Slumgullion lives on in modern, slow-cooked stews that blend diverse ingredients to produce bold flavors. Though times have changed, the recipe's underlying message remains. Ingenuity can turn humble beginnings into a meal that brings people together. Every spoonful of Slumgullion is a nod to the past, a celebration of resourcefulness that turns life's leftovers into a feast. Cornbread. Cornbread, a staple at every Depression-era table, was the unsung hero of many kitchens. This humble bread was more than a side dish. It was the canvas upon which families painted their hopes of a better tomorrow. Made from coarse cornmeal mixed with water, a pinch of salt, and sometimes a dab of lard, it rose from the simplest of ingredients to become a comforting staple. Baking cornbread was a communal activity in many small towns, with neighbors sharing their secret techniques to ensure a soft yet hearty loaf. The mixture was poured into a hot grease skillet and baked until it developed a crisp golden crust that concealed a tender interior. In an era when even a loaf of bread was a luxury, cornbread provided both sustenance and a symbol of perseverance. Its texture and taste could be modified by adding whatever little ingredients were available: a spoonful of sugar for a hint of sweetness or a sprinkle of herbs for flavor. Today, as modern bakers experiment with whole grains and ancient methods, the spirit of Depression-era cornbread lives on. It is a reminder that simplicity can be delicious and that every grain carries a legacy of survival. With each bite, one can taste the determination of families who turned basic ingredients into a timeless comfort food that still finds its way onto dinner tables across the South. Potato soup. Potato soup was a lifeline for families during the Depression, a hearty meal that provided warmth and comfort on the coldest days. Made from potatoes, water or broth, and whatever seasonings were on hand, this soup was a celebration of the humble spud. The process began with peeling and chopping a few modest potatoes, then simmering them slowly until they softened and released their natural starch. The result was a thick, creamy soup that was both filling and adaptable. Cooks would often add a few scraps of meat or leftover vegetables to enrich the flavor, turning a simple dish into a full-course meal. Potato soup was more than just nourishment. It was a communal ritual. Neighbors would gather around large pots bubbling over open fires, sharing stories and laughter as they stirred in ingredients that had seen better days but now had a new lease on life. Even today, the legacy of Depression-era potato soup endures. Home cooks recreate the dish with modern twists, yet the underlying principle remains, transforming everyday potatoes into a meal that warms the soul. Every spoonful carries memories of simpler times when the ingenuity of the human spirit could turn the most ordinary ingredients into a comforting feast for all. Oatmeal loaf. Oatmeal loaf was the ultimate testament to Depression-era thriftiness. With ingredients that were inexpensive yet nutritious, this loaf became a staple in many households. Oats, water, and a bit of baking powder were mixed with any available extras, perhaps a handful of raisins or a dash of cinnamon, to form a dense, hearty bread that could be sliced and enjoyed throughout the day. The art of making oatmeal loaf was in its simplicity. Families would grind oats by hand, mix them with water, and press the mixture into a loaf pan over a modest fire. The slow baking process allowed the flavors to meld together, creating a texture that was both chewy and satisfying. Even though it lacked the refinement of more elaborate breads, oatmeal loaf provided much needed energy and warmth to those who could not afford more. In modern kitchens, oatmeal has seen a revival as a superfood, yet few recipes can match the humble charm of Depression-era oatmeal loaf. It reminds us that even in times of scarcity, there was creativity and care in the way food was prepared. Each slice of oatmeal bread is a nod to the resourcefulness and determination of families who turned a simple grain into a meal that sustained them through hardship and left a legacy of resilience. Scrapple. Scrapple is a dish born out of necessity and ingenuity during the Depression. This pork-based mush, made from leftover bits of meat and cornmeal, was a clever way to ensure that no part of a costly animal went to waste. The process was simple yet creative, simmering pork scraps with spices, then mixing the liquid with cornmeal, and allowing it to set into a firm loaf. Once cooled, scrapple was sliced and fried until the exterior became crisp while the inside remained soft and savory. It was often served as a hearty breakfast, a reminder that even the simplest ingredients, when combined with skill and resourcefulness, could yield a satisfying meal. Families took pride in this dish, which not only maximized their food supply, but also offered a unique taste that was both rich and comforting. Today, scrapple has become a regional delicacy in parts of America, celebrated for its deep connection to the past. Modern chefs may reinvent the dish with gourmet twists, but its roots remain in the creative kitchens of the Depression. Every slice of scrapple is a tribute to a time when nothing was wasted and every morsel was cherished, a culinary reminder of how necessity can breed innovation and flavor. Baked beans. Baked beans were a common and comforting dish that graced many Depression-era tables. Beans, a naturally inexpensive source of protein and fiber, were slowly simmered in a pot with molasses, mustard, and a splash of vinegar. The long, slow cooking process allowed the flavors to develop, resulting in a dish that was both hearty and satisfying. In homes where food was scarce, every ingredient was treasured. Baked beans were not just a meal, but a symbol of perseverance. Families would often share a single pot of beans, served over cornbread, or alongside a simple slice of meat. The sweet and savory flavors melded together, creating a taste that was both rustic and deeply nostalgic. Cooking beans from scratch was an art. Each stir and simmer brought the dish closer to perfection. Modern kitchens still celebrate baked beans, though the recipes may now include a variety of spices and ingredients. The original Depression-era version, however, reminds us of a time when every bean counted, and the simplest ingredients could be transformed into a meal that warmed the body and spirit. Each bowl is a delicious reminder of resilience, resourcefulness, and the shared history of a generation that made the most out of every morsel. Bacon and onion sandwich. The bacon and onion sandwich was a quick, satisfying meal that became a beloved treat during the Depression. With only a few ingredients, crispy bacon, sweet caramelized onions, and a slice of hearty bread, this sandwich was a testament to the idea that even the simplest combinations could yield a feast for the senses. Cooks would render bacon until it was perfectly crisp, letting the fat drip away while the sizzling sound filled the kitchen with hope. Meanwhile, onions were slowly sautéed until their natural sugars broke free, turning them into golden, aromatic jewels. The result was a sandwich that balanced savory and sweet in a way that was both comforting and surprising. Despite its simplicity, every bite was filled with layers of flavor, each one telling a story of resourcefulness in a time when every ingredient was precious. Today, while gourmet sandwiches have taken center stage in trendy cafes, the bacon and onion sandwich remains a cherished memory for those who value simple pleasures. It stands as a culinary reminder that sometimes the most satisfying meals are made from ingredients that are affordable yet full of character. Every sandwich recalls a time when a few basic items could be transformed into a moment of joy and sustenance in the midst of hardship. Fried potatoes, peels. When food was scarce, nothing went to waste, not even the peels of potatoes. Fried potatoes peels were a creative solution to make every part of this humble tuber count. Instead of discarding the skins, resourceful cooks would season and fry them until they turned crisp and golden, transforming what was once considered waste into a crunchy, irresistible snack. The process was simple. After peeling the potatoes, the skins were tossed with a bit of salt and a splash of oil before being dropped into a hot skillet. The sizzling sound of the frying peels was a small celebration of ingenuity, a noisy reminder that even the discarded parts of our meals could be reimagined as a delicious treat. With each bite, the flavors were both rustic and comforting, carrying the earthy taste of the potato, along with a hint of smokiness from the frying process. Modern snack enthusiasts have rediscovered the charm of fried potatoes peels, now served as a crunchy side dish or a gourmet topping on salads. Yet, its roots lie in the Depression era, where every scrap was cherished and nothing was wasted. Each crisp, every crackle serves as a reminder of the resourcefulness that defined a generation, turning kitchen leftovers into little bites of hope and satisfaction. Depression cake. Depression cake, also known as wacky cake, is a dessert that defied the hardships of its time by eliminating expensive ingredients like eggs, butter, and milk. Instead, it relied on basic pantry staples such as flour, sugar, cocoa powder, and vinegar. In an era when treats were a luxury, this cake offered a small slice of indulgence without breaking the bank. Baked in simple home ovens, Depression cake was a marvel of frugality. The ingredients, though few, combined in a surprising alchemy that produced a moist, chocolatey dessert with a delicate crumb. The secret lay in the clever use of vinegar and baking soda, which caused the batter to rise despite the absence of eggs. Families gathered around the table to share this cake, its rich flavor a sweet escape from the bitter reality of the times. Even today, Depression cake is celebrated as a reminder that creativity can triumph over adversity. Modern bakers often put their own spin on the recipe, yet the original charm remains unchanged. Every bite of Depression cake is a testament to a generation's resilience, a delicious symbol of how even the simplest ingredients can come together to create something truly magical when hope is the main ingredient. Bread pudding. Like Tim's bread pudding turned stale bread into a decadent treat during the Great Depression. Rather than letting perfectly good bread go to waste, families would soak it in a mixture of water, sugar, and spices, then bake it until it transformed into a soft custard-like dessert. This resourceful recipe was a celebration of ingenuity, turning the forgotten into the unforgettable. The process was as simple as it was inventive. Leftover bread was cubed and layered in a pan, then drenched in a sweet syrup spiced with cinnamon and nutmeg. As the pudding baked, the bread absorbed the flavors, softening into a moist, comforting dish that felt both luxurious and homely. Every spoonful carried the warmth of family gatherings and the sweetness of small victories in hard times. The aroma alone was enough to lift spirits and spark smiles as it evoked memories of shared meals and the simple joy of turning scarcity into celebration. Today, bread pudding remains a beloved dessert, often reimagined with modern ingredients and techniques. Yet, its roots in Depression-era kitchens serve as a powerful reminder that even the most unassuming ingredients can be reborn into something extraordinary. Each serving is a tribute to a time when resourcefulness reigned, and every slice of stale bread held the promise of something delicious. Molasses cookies. Molasses cookies were a clever adaptation of sweet treats during lean times, made with molasses, a pantry staple that provided rich, dark sweetness at a low cost. These cookies captured the essence of Depression-era ingenuity. The dough was simple: flour, molasses, a pinch of baking soda, and whatever spices were at hand, yet it yielded cookies that were delightfully chewy and deeply flavorful. In kitchens where sugar was a luxury, molasses became the star ingredient, turning basic dough into a confection that was both economical and satisfying. The aroma of baking molasses cookies would waft through modest homes, drawing family members together for a small moment of indulgence. Every cookie was a small victory, a reminder that even in hard times, life could be sweet if you knew how to mix the ingredients right. The texture, with its slight crunch on the edges and a tender, chewy center, was a perfect balance of simplicity and delight. Today, these cookies may be less common on modern menus, but their legacy endures in every bite of a well-baked treat. Molasses cookies stand as a symbol of creative resourcefulness, a reminder that with a little ingenuity and a lot of heart, even the most basic ingredients can be transformed into a cherished dessert that brightens a tough day. Rice and raisins. Rice and raisins might seem like a modest dish at first glance, yet it was a clever way to stretch ingredients and create a meal that was both filling and comforting. During the Depression, rice was a cheap, abundant grain, and raisins, once considered a luxury, were used sparingly to add a burst of sweetness and texture to an otherwise plain dish. The recipe was simple, but required a creative touch. Rice was cooked slowly with water or broth until it reached a tender consistency. Once nearly done, a handful of raisins was stirred in, allowing them to plump up and infuse the dish with their natural sweetness. A sprinkle of cinnamon or a dash of nutmeg might be added to enhance the flavor. This humble dish was often served as a side, yet it could also stand alone as a light meal. The raisins provided a welcome surprise in each bite, turning a basic grain into something memorable. Modern cooks have rediscovered the charm of rice and raisins, now often dressed up with nuts or a drizzle of honey. However, the Depression-era version remains a symbol of how resourcefulness can transform everyday ingredients into a dish that nourishes both body and soul. Every spoonful is a tribute to a time when a little sweetness went a long way in brightening the darkest of days. Potato and onion pie. Potato and onion pie was the epitome of comfort food in tough times. A savory dish that combined the humble potato and the versatile onion into a hearty pie. The crust was made from simple flour and water, while the filling was a mix of thinly sliced potatoes and onions, layered with minimal seasonings and a touch of grease or fat to bring it all together. The pie was baked slowly until the potatoes softened and the onions turned translucent, releasing a sweet, savory aroma that filled the kitchen. Every slice told a story of perseverance, a recipe born from the need to make every ingredient count. The texture was satisfying, a delicate, flaky crust surrounding a rich, mellow filling that warmed the body and comforted the soul. Families would gather around the table, sharing not just a meal, but the memory of how even the most basic ingredients could be transformed into something special. Today, potato and onion pie may be reinterpreted with modern twists, yet its original spirit remains intact. It is a reminder that in the face of adversity, creativity in the kitchen can bring about dishes that are not only delicious but also steeped in history. Each bite of this pie is a nod to the resourcefulness and determination that defined a generation determined to rise above hardship with every meal. Eggless pancakes. Eggless pancakes were a breakfast savior during the Depression, a simple yet satisfying way to start the day when eggs were scarce. Made without the usual binding ingredient, these pancakes relied on basic pantry staples like flour, water, and a touch of baking soda to rise just enough for a light, fluffy texture. The process was straightforward. A thin batter was mixed with care, ensuring it was smooth despite the absence of eggs. The pancakes were poured onto a hot griddle, where the sizzling sound announced their transformation from batter to golden rounds of comfort. Often served with a drizzle of syrup or a dusting of sugar, they provided a modest yet fulfilling meal that lifted spirits with each bite. The simplicity of Eggless pancakes was a reminder that even when luxuries were stripped away, the creativity of cooks could still yield a breakfast that was both satisfying and full of heart. In modern times, Eggless pancakes have enjoyed a resurgence among those with dietary restrictions, yet few recipes capture the humble origins of this Depression-era staple. Each pancake is a tribute to the resourcefulness of a bygone era, proving that even the simplest ingredients can come together to create something wonderful. A small breakfast revolution born out of necessity and served with a side of hope. Johnny Cakes. Johnny Cakes, a dish with roots in both Native American tradition and Depression-era ingenuity, were a favorite among those who needed to make every bite count. These cornmeal cakes were made from a simple batter of cornmeal, water, and salt, then fried to a crisp perfection that made them an ideal snack or side dish. The beauty of Johnny Cakes lay in their versatility. They could be eaten plain, slathered with a bit of butter, or even used as a base for other toppings, turning them into a meal in their own right. In many homes, the recipe was passed down through generations, each cook adding a small twist that reflected the local ingredients available at the time. As they sizzled on the griddle, Johnny Cakes became more than just food. They were a symbol of community and continuity, a reminder that even in the midst of scarcity, there was always room for a little celebration at the table. Today, these cornmeal cakes have been reimagined in various culinary traditions, yet the original Depression-era Johnny Cakes remain cherished for their simplicity and hearty flavor. Every bite connects us to a time when resourcefulness reigned, and every meal was a testament to the creative spirit of those who made the most out of the simplest of ingredients: biscuits and gravy. Biscuits and gravy was a dish that turned a humble biscuit into a luxurious experience even in the leanest of times. In Depression kitchens, biscuits were baked from scratch using basic ingredients like flour, water, and a pinch of salt. The gravy, often made from leftover meat drippings, was thickened with flour and seasoned to perfection. Together, they created a breakfast that was both hearty and indulgent, a rare treat during hard times. The process was almost ritualistic. Freshly baked biscuits were split open and generously smothered with the savory, creamy gravy. The aroma of sizzling meat drippings and freshly ground pepper filled the air, promising comfort in every bite. Families gathered around the table, their spirits lifted by the simple pleasure of a warm meal that defied the hardships outside their doors. Despite its simplicity, every serving of biscuits and gravy was a celebration of resourcefulness, a dish that reminded everyone that even the most modest ingredients could be transformed into something deeply satisfying. Modern diners may enjoy gourmet versions of this classic, but the original recipe remains a powerful reminder of Depression-era creativity. Each plate of biscuits and gravy is a savory story of perseverance, a tribute to those who believe that every meal, no matter how simple, held the potential to brighten even the darkest days. Potato pancakes. Potato pancakes were a versatile treat that provided comfort on both breakfast and dinner tables during the Depression. Made from grated potatoes mixed with a little flour and seasoning, these pancakes were pan-fried to create a crispy exterior and a tender, flavorful center. The process of grating, mixing, and frying was both a practical way to use every part of the potato and a creative expression of making something delicious out of what was on hand. In small kitchens across America, families would gather around the stove as the potato shreds transformed into golden, crispy pancakes. The aroma of frying potatoes filled the room with a sense of home and resilience. Often served with a dollop of sour cream or a sprinkle of chives, these pancakes were a reminder that resourcefulness could yield a meal that was as satisfying as it was economical. Each pancake was a small triumph over scarcity, a dish that spoke of frugality and ingenuity. Today, potato pancakes continue to be enjoyed in many forms, from the traditional recipes passed down through generations to modern interpretations with a twist. Yet the original Depression-era version remains a cherished reminder that even the simplest ingredients can be turned into something heartwarming. A small, crispy ode to the art of making do and making it delicious.